After everything we've been through, you do this to me. I don't understand how you could be so cruel.
When Jack saw the text, he thought it was just another mistake. But mistakes don't laugh with you, kiss you, or ruin you from the inside out. 2 months later, the Mafia boss learned the truth. He'd been sleeping with the enemy. Before we delve right in, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us to keep bringing you all these amazing stories. The rain hadn't stopped all night. It came down in thin, silvery threads that blurred the city lights and whispered against the windows of Amber Robinson's tiny apartment. She sat cross-legged on the couch, the glow from her phone screen reflecting off tired eyes. "Fix the heat, or I'll show up myself." She reread the text once, sighed, then hit send. It was meant for her landlord, another empty threat after weeks of broken promises. But what Amber didn't know was that her exhausted fingers had just pressed send to a number that belonged to Jack Lincoln, the most feared man on the East Coast. Tell me, have you ever sent a message you instantly wished you could take back? Amber tossed her phone aside and rubbed her temples, the radiator clanking like it was mocking her. Her hair stuck to her forehead, her blouse wrinkled from another 12-hour day at the precinct. To the world, she was just another woman trying to make rent. To a handful of people who mattered, she was Detective Robinson, undercover, relentless, and one mistake away from exposure. Then her phone buzzed. A new message. Unknown number. "You've got guts. Most people don't text me like that and live to tell it." Her heart jumped. The words looked wrong, too sharp, too cold. She frowned. Who talks like that? Maybe you've felt it too, that creeping chill when you realize something's not right. But curiosity wins anyway. Amber typed back quickly, fingers trembling just enough to blur the letters. "Then I guess I'm lucky. Sorry for the mistake." For a moment, silence. Then another buzz. "Don't be sorry. I like bold people." She exhaled slowly, confused and intrigued all at once. There was something magnetic about that confidence, the kind that only came from danger. From his penthouse overlooking the harbor, Jack Lincoln leaned back in his chair, the city's pulse glowing beneath him. He wasn't used to being talked to like that, not by strangers, not by anyone. He could order fear with a glance, silence with a word. But this woman's text, it made him smirk, maybe even curious. He sent another message. "Who are you?" Amber stared at her screen. She almost deleted the thread. Almost. But instead, she replied with something harmless. "Just someone who texted the wrong person." That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. Over the next few days, the texts didn't stop. What started as small talk became long conversations that stretched into the night. Jack told her about his family business. She didn't ask what kind. He liked that. She told him she worked in community affairs, half-truths stitched together from real pieces of her cover. And somewhere between the jokes, the silences, and the late-night confessions, they stopped feeling like strangers. Ever wondered how a single mistake could change everything? When they finally met, the air itself seemed to hold its breath. The parking lot was quiet, too quiet, when Amber saw him for the first time. Dark suit, sharp jawline, gold chain glinting under the streetlight. Power wrapped in calm. "You're not what I expected," he said, voice low, steady. She clutched her phone like it was a shield. "Maybe you expected someone scared." He smiled, a dangerous, amused kind of smile. "I don't scare easily. Neither did she. From that moment, something shifted. Jack Lincoln, the man who ruled empires in silence and blood, began to feel something unfamiliar: warmth. And Amber, the woman sworn to bring down his world, began to question her mission. Every message she sent, every laugh she shared, was evidence she could never file. Every look he gave her felt like a confession neither of them could afford. So, what would you do if the person you were falling for was the very one you were meant to destroy? As the rain subsided and the city hummed back to life, one thing became clear: love had already entered the battlefield. And if you believe that fate sometimes hides in mistakes, tap that like button and share this story. Because what comes next isn't just about love, it's about loyalty, betrayal, and the price of one wrong message. Stay with us, and don't forget to subscribe for more unforgettable stories. Jack Lincoln's world ran on silence, the kind of silence that came before fear. Outside his penthouse, a fleet of black cars idled like shadows waiting for orders. Inside, the glow of city lights bled through floor-to-ceiling windows, cutting across marble floors and half-empty whiskey glasses. It was a beautiful cage built from power, money, and 1,000 whispered threats. And yet, that night, the only thing on Jack's mind wasn't business. It was a message. He leaned back in his chair, rereading it. "If you keep ignoring my messages, I'll show up myself, bold, careless, fearless. No one, not cops, not politicians, not even his own men, ever spoke to him like that. The people in his world measured their words. This woman hadn't even checked her aim. He couldn't decide if it amused him or irritated him. "Boss!" Marcus, his lieutenant, stood by the door, posture rigid. "You good?" Jack's thumb hovered over the phone screen. "Yeah, just dealing with something different." Marcus raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. No one questioned Jack Lincoln twice. When the door clicked shut, Jack stared out at the skyline. For years, power had given him everything: control, fear, respect. But it had taken something too: truth. No one ever told him the truth anymore. No one dared. Except her, even if she hadn't meant to. He smirked and typed, "You've got guts. Most people don't text me like that and live to tell it." He didn't expect her to reply, but when his phone buzzed seconds later, something in him shifted. "Then, I guess I'm lucky. Sorry for the mistake." Lucky. The word lingered. He couldn't remember the last time anyone called him that. Maybe he just wanted to see what kind of woman talked to the devil like he was a stranger at a bus stop. Or maybe it was boredom. Either way, he found himself replying again. "Don't be sorry. I like bold people." Days passed, then a week, and somehow the wrong number became a constant. He texted her between meetings. She replied between moments of silence. Their chats were simple, ordinary, almost human. She asked him what he did. He said, "Family business." She asked if he traveled much. He said, "Not unless I have to." She didn't pry. That was new. Everyone wanted something from Jack Lincoln. She didn't. And for Amber, the mystery was intoxicating. She told herself it was harmless, just a conversation. But there was something about his tone, confident yet distant, dangerous but oddly protective. She could almost feel the way he carried himself, the quiet dominance behind every short reply. Maybe that was why she started keeping her phone close, waiting for that vibration. "You work too much," he texted one night. "And you don't sleep enough," she shot back. He smiled, the kind of smile that made his men nervous. "Maybe you should tell me how to fix that." It was the first time in years he'd flirted, and meant it. Meanwhile, across town, Amber sat at her cluttered desk, the city's hum spilling through the cracked blinds. Her phone buzzed again, and she smiled without realizing it. Then another phone rang, her work phone. "Detective Robinson?" a voice greeted her. It was Sergeant Miller, her handler. "Been a while," he said. "You still stationed downtown?" "Yeah, wait. We're reactivating an old case. A local syndicate. We think they've resurfaced. Same players as before. Name ring any bells?" "Lincoln family." Her fingers froze around the pen she'd been twirling. "Copy that?" she said quickly, masking her reaction. "What's the assignment?" "We'll brief you in a few days. For now, keep your ears open. We need someone on the inside again." When the call ended, she sat motionless. Her phone buzzed again, the other one. "Still awake?" Her pulse quickened. She stared at the two screens, the badge on one, his name on the other. Two sides of a coin spinning toward disaster. "Tell me, what would you do if the line between duty and desire started to blur?" She hesitated, then typed back, "Barely." "You?" Jack replied almost instantly, wide awake. Thinking about that first text, "You ever wonder if mistakes happen for a reason?" Amber's breath caught. Somewhere deep down she knew the truth, that fate wasn't playing fair. Because the stranger who texted back wasn't just anyone. He was the man she'd been sent to catch. If you're feeling the tension too, hit that like button and share this story with someone who believes one message can change everything. It started with a ringtone that didn't belong. Amber's phone buzzed, lighting up her dark apartment. For a moment, she hesitated, his name glowing on the screen. They'd been texting for a week, but this was different. Her heart beat a little faster. Curiosity won. She answered, "Hello?" For a second, there was only silence. Then a voice. Calm, deep, controlled. "So, the mysterious woman finally picks up." His tone wasn't what she expected. Smooth, deliberate, with the faintest trace of amusement. That voice carried confidence, but not arrogance. Danger wrapped in velvet. Amber swallowed, trying to sound casual. "Guess you finally decided to prove you're real." Jack chuckled, low and unhurried. "You doubted me?" "I doubt everyone," she said. "It's safer that way." "Smart," he replied. "But tell me, what's safe ever done for you?" The question landed deeper than it should have. There was something about the way he spoke, like he could see through her hesitation and reach the part she didn't show anyone. She shifted in her seat, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her coffee mug. "So, what do you do exactly?" "I told you," Jack said. "Family business." "That's vague." He smiled at the pause that followed. "That's the point." Amber laughed softly, shaking her head. "You like being mysterious, don't you?" "Only when it keeps people guessing," he said. "But you're different. You don't ask too much. You just listen." He meant it as a compliment. But to Amber, it felt like a warning and a confession all at once. Somewhere across the city, Jack leaned back in his chair, the city lights glinting off the glass behind him. For years, every voice around him spoke in whispers, fear disguised as respect. Every conversation had an angle, every word a purpose. But this was simple, uncalculated, human. He found himself smiling, not the cold smirk that terrified his men, but something unfamiliar, genuine. I can't remember the last time someone talked to me like this, he admitted quietly. Amber hesitated, caught off guard by the honesty in his tone. Maybe you just needed someone to listen. Maybe, he murmured. Or maybe I just needed someone who doesn't already know my name. Her chest tightened. He had no idea how close he was to the truth. Over the next few days, the calls became their new routine. Late-night conversations about nothing and everything, childhood dreams, favorite songs, regrets whispered between the lines. Amber told herself it was fine. Harmless information gathering, she repeated whenever guilt whispered her name. But every time she heard his voice, that line between duty and curiosity blurred a little more. He wasn't what she imagined. He was calm, thoughtful, funny even, and that terrified her more than anything. One night, after another long call filled with laughter that shouldn't have existed, Jack said softly, "You know what I like about you?" "What's that?" "You don't flinch." "Should I?" "Most people do," he said. "They feel something off about me. But you don't scare easy." Amber's throat went dry. "Maybe I just haven't seen what they see." "Or maybe," he said, voice lowering, "you see more than they ever could." For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them hummed, intimate, dangerous, magnetic. "Tell me something," he said finally. "Why do you keep talking to me?" She almost said for work, but what came out was softer. "Because you don't sound like the man everyone warns me about." Jack smiled at that, not knowing how close her words cut. Minutes later, when they were about to hang up, his voice dropped to a quiet challenge. "I want to see you." Amber froze. "What?" "I want to see the woman who isn't afraid of me." Her breath hitched. Every instinct screamed no. Every emotion whispered yes, the weight of her badge, the warmth in his voice, both pulling her in opposite directions. "Maybe one day," she said finally, forcing a smile he couldn't see. Jack's tone softened. "I'll hold you to that." When the call ended, the camera fades between two rooms, one lit by city glass and secrets, the other dim and trembling with questions. He smiled, intrigued. She sat in silence, her heart betraying her cause. "Tell me, if the person you were falling for might destroy you, would you still answer the call? If that question made you hold your breath, don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who loves a dangerous kind of love." The night air carried a chill, the kind that sharpened every sound, every heartbeat. Amber stood by her car in the near-empty parking lot, the glow from the overhead lights spilling across the pavement like liquid silver. Her phone trembled slightly in her hand. A message blinked on the screen. "Jack Lincoln, I'm here." She exhaled slowly. This was it. The moment curiosity crossed into something more dangerous. From the corner of her eye, she saw headlights cut through the darkness. A sleek black car rolled to a stop beside hers. The engine purred, smooth, powerful, silent. And then he stepped out. Jack Lincoln. Tall, sharp suit. Every move is precise, as if the world itself bent slightly to make room for him. The gold chain against his open collar glinted faintly in the light. But it was his eyes that froze her in place. Steady, assessing, alive with quiet power. For a long second, neither spoke. Only the wind moved. Then he smiled. A slow, knowing curve that carried both charm and warning. "So," he said, voice deep and unhurried, "you're the woman who doesn't scare easy." Amber forced a smirk, even as her pulse betrayed her. "And you're the man who doesn't take no for an answer." He chuckled, the sound low and rich. "You're not what I expected." "Maybe you expected someone scared," she replied, meeting his gaze. His eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but intrigue. "Maybe I did." The space between them felt smaller than it was, heavy with something unspoken. Every instinct in Amber's body screamed danger. Every second she spent near him pulled her deeper into a current she couldn't escape. He took a step closer, slow, deliberate. "You look different than I imagined." "Disappointed?" she asked, folding her arms to hide her shaking hands. "Not even close," he said. "You've got fire. Most people dim it when I walk in." Amber swallowed, her throat tight. "Maybe you just need to stop walking into the wrong rooms." That earned her another smile, the kind that could disarm an army. "You've got jokes. I like that." "I'm full of surprises." "I bet you are." Their words danced between banter and confession, each line a test of trust neither of them should be offering. Amber could feel her heartbeat in her wrists. Every rule, every warning from her training echoed in her mind. Stay detached. Never cross the line. But here, under the quiet hum of the parking lot lights, that line blurred into smoke. For Jack, it was strange, almost intoxicating. He'd met hundreds of people who smiled when they feared him, who bent their words to please him, who looked away when his gaze grew too heavy. Amber didn't flinch. She looked at him like she saw the man, not the monster. And for the first time in years, he didn't want to correct her. "Tell me," he said, stepping just close enough for his cologne, subtle, dark, to mix with the night air. "What made you answer my text that day?" She hesitated, clutching her phone tighter. "I'm still asking myself that." "Maybe it wasn't a mistake," he said softly. "Or maybe it was the worst one I ever made." He smiled again, eyes glinting. "Guess we'll find out." The words hung between them, a promise and a threat in equal measure. A car drove by in the distance, its headlights washing briefly over their faces. For a heartbeat, the world went still. Amber's phone buzzed again, a distraction, a reminder. Probably her handler checking in. She ignored it. Jack noticed the flicker of hesitation. "Something wrong?" "No," she lied. "Just cold." He reached out without thinking, his hand brushing against hers as if testing permission. The touch was brief, but the air between them shifted instantly. She didn't pull away. For one impossible moment, time froze. Two lives colliding in a place neither of them should have been. When he finally stepped back, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I'll see you again, Amber." Her name on his lips felt dangerous, too personal, too real. She nodded once, unable to trust her voice. He turned, walking back to his car, every step echoing like a promise in the dark. Amber watched him go, her heart torn between the badge under her jacket and the man who made her forget it existed. The night swallowed the sound of his engine as he drove away, leaving her alone in the cold glow of the lights. Would you trust a stranger whose touch feels like truth, even when you know it's built on lies? If that moment left you breathless, don't forget to like, comment, and share this story, because this kind of danger only gets deeper from here. Rain tapped against the window like a restless secret. Amber sat across from Jack in his penthouse suite, the city lights below them painting her reflection in shards of gold and shadow. These meetings had become their ritual, unplanned, unspoken, inevitable. Sometimes they met in quiet cafes where no one looked twice. Sometimes it was her car, parked just beyond the reach of streetlights. And sometimes, like tonight, it was here, a place too soft, too safe for the lines they were crossing. Jack poured her a glass of wine, his movements slow, deliberate. "You know," he said, "I used to hate silence." Amber tilted her head. "Witty." He looked out the window, his voice low. "Because when you grow up in a house full of shouting, silence feels like what comes after." Her heart clenched. This wasn't the man she'd studied in her police files, the one described as ruthless, untouchable. This was someone else. "Your father?" she asked softly. Jack gave a faint nod. "He taught me two things: never show weakness, and never trust love." Amber's voice barely escaped her lips. "And yet, here you are, talking to a stranger you met by accident." He looked at her then, really looked, and for a moment the Mafia boss was gone. What sat across from her was just a man, exhausted from his own legend. "Maybe I was tired of silence," he said simply. The days blurred into nights, and the nights into long calls that stretched until dawn. His voice became the sound she fell asleep to, calm, deep, and devastatingly human. She told herself it was still part of the mission: information gathering, psychological insight, leverage. But the truth was crueler. She liked hearing him laugh. She liked when he remembered the small things, her favorite coffee, the way she twirled her hair when thinking, how she paused before lying. And that terrified her more than any gun ever could. Her handler's voice snapped through the phone one morning. "Amber, you're 3 weeks in. We need something, anything. Don't tell me you're getting attached." Her throat tightened. "He's cautious. I'm earning his trust. Just give me more time." "You're not there to earn it," the voice hissed. "You're there to use it." When the line went dead, she sat in her car, staring at her reflection in the rearview mirror, a face split between duty and desire. That night, when Jack called, she didn't answer right away. Her finger hovered over the screen. Then she gave in, because silence, his kind of silence, had started to feel like loneliness. At the next meeting, Jack seemed distracted. One of his lieutenants had given him a look, half concern, half warning. "She's making you weak, boss," the man had said. "People are starting to notice." Jack didn't answer then, but the words followed him into every conversation, every laugh, every time Amber's eyes met his. Tonight, sitting across from her, he broke the silence. "They think you're a distraction," he said. Amber tensed. "Are they wrong?" He smiled faintly. "They don't understand. You make me forget what I am." Her pulse quickened. "And what are you, Jack?" "Someone who wants to change." The air between them trembled. In her purse, hidden beneath her phone, was a small digital recorder, standard issue for undercover ops. Her thumb brushed against the record button. This was it. The kind of confession that could end his empire. But she didn't press it. Because at that moment, she wasn't a cop. She was just a woman sitting across from a man who sounded like he meant it. Later, as he walked her to her car, she noticed the small things again. The way he opened the door for her, how his hand lingered just a second longer on the edge of her sleeve. She wanted to tell him everything, to confess who she really was. But the words stayed trapped behind her teeth. When she finally drove away, the city lights blurred through the rain. She pulled over a few blocks away, her hands gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. In her bag, the recorder still glowed faintly, unpressed, accusing. She closed her eyes and whispered into the empty car. Some lies feel too heavy to carry, but too dangerous to confess. Would you have pressed record if the truth could destroy the person you were falling for? Tell me in the comments. And if this chapter left you torn between right and wrong, like and share this video to keep the story alive. The order came at dawn, a coded message. Short, cold, final. Plant the tracker tonight. No delays. Amber sat on the edge of her bed, phone in hand, heart pounding like a clock, counting down to something she couldn't escape. The city outside was waking up. Sirens, traffic, life. But inside her apartment, everything was still. Too still. For hours, she stared at the small black device on her kitchen counter. Something so small shouldn't hold that much power. But in her world, it did. One press, one placement. And Jack Lincoln's empire would crumble. She told herself it was justice. She told herself it was duty. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw him. The way he laughed when he forgot to be guarded. The way his voice softened when he said her name like it meant something. Have you ever tried to convince your heart that doing the right thing wouldn't break it? By nightfall, she'd stopped trying. She grabbed the tracker, shoved it into her pocket, and drove. Jack's mansion stood on the hill like a shadow above the city. Sleek black cars parked in perfect formation, guards posted like statues. Amber flashed the familiar nod. They knew her now. They always did. Jack trusted her, and that trust was the weapon she carried tonight. Inside, the air smelled of whiskey and rain-soaked leather. The lights were dim, the hum of jazz low and soft. Jack wasn't in sight, or so she thought. She made her way toward the private garage, the tracker burning in her palm. Her breath fogged in the cold air. Each step echoed louder than it should. She crouched beside his car, the black one, the one he said was his favorite, and lifted the edge of the bumper. Her hand shook. She tried to steady it, but the moment the tracker touched the metal, a voice broke the silence. "Couldn't sleep, huh?" Her entire body froze. Jack stepped from the shadows, hands in his pockets, eyes darker than the night itself. His presence filled the space, calm, unreadable, terrifying in its quiet. She swallowed hard. "Jack, He cut her off with a look. His gaze dropped to her hand, to the small, blinking device between her fingers. "Funny," he said softly, almost like a sigh. "That looks a lot like the things cops use." The sound of those words tore through her like glass. "Jack, it's not what you think," she whispered, voice trembling. "I can explain." "Can you?" His tone was too calm. That was worse than anger. "Because I think it's exactly what I think." He stepped closer, and she could see it, the hurt buried beneath the fury. He wasn't just betrayed. He was broken. Amber's lips quivered. "I didn't plan this. I swear. At first it was just a job. I was told to get close, to gather information. But then, Then you what?" His voice cracked for the first time. "You fell for me?" Tears blurred her vision. "Yes, God, yes." The silence that followed felt endless. Jack's jaw tightened. He turned away, running a hand over his face, trying to contain the storm behind his eyes. "You should have stayed away," he said finally, voice low. "You don't know what you've just done." "I didn't come here to hurt you," she pleaded. "I came here because I didn't want this to end like..." "Like what?" He spun toward her. Like every other lie you've told me. Her tears fell freely now, her voice barely a whisper. It wasn't all a lie. Jack stared at her, the woman who had made him laugh, made him trust again, made him forget the weight of his sins. And now, she stood before him, holding proof that love and betrayal could share the same heartbeat. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Jack's voice came, soft and final. Leave. Amber hesitated. Jack, please, leave. His tone left no room for choice. She dropped the tracker on the cold concrete floor, its red light still blinking between them, like a dying pulse. As she turned to go, her sobs filled the silence he refused to break. Jack stood there, unmoving, watching the woman he'd let inside his walls walk away with the last piece of his trust. And when the garage door closed behind her, he finally let his mask fall. His fists clenched, his eyes glistened, and the empire built on control felt suddenly fragile. Sometimes, betrayal doesn't sound like gunfire. Sometimes, it's just the sound of a door closing on something real. If this moment shattered your heart, let it be felt. Tap that like button, share this story, and tell us in the comments, do you think love can survive the truth? The night after the betrayal didn't end. It just bled into morning. One long, sleepless stretch of silence and storm. Jack Lincoln didn't shout. He didn't break things. He just stared at the empty space where she'd stood, her scent of rain and guilt still hanging in the air. His men stormed in within the hour. Word traveled fast in his world. Faster than blood, faster than truth. "Boss," one of them said, gripping a pistol, "say the word. We'll take care of her." Jack's voice was ice. "No one touches her." Confusion rippled across their faces. "Boss, she's a cop. I said no one touches her." That was the first time his men saw fear in his eyes. Not for himself, but for her. And that scared them more than anything. They dragged her back that night. Amber didn't fight. She didn't beg. She looked hollow. He locked her in one of the guest rooms, a gilded cage with soft sheets and bolted doors. From the hallway, his voice came through, low but sharp. "Don't mistake comfort for forgiveness." The lock clicked, and silence settled like ash. Inside, Amber pressed her forehead to the cool wall. She could still hear the faint hum of the city outside, the same city that would hail her as a hero if she made it out. But what good was victory if it meant destroying the only man who had seen her, for more than the badge? Hours turned into days. Footsteps came and went. Meals were left at her door. Jack didn't come back. But his absence haunted her more than his anger ever could. She replayed every memory. The way he'd tuck her hair behind her ear mid-laughter. The night he said he didn't care about redemption, just her staying. The warmth of his hand on hers as they looked over the city skyline. Now all of it felt like a cruel mirage. When he finally appeared, it was in the middle of the third night. The door opened with a slow creak. He stood there, disheveled, eyes rimmed red from lack of sleep. Amber rose slowly. "Jack." He didn't answer. He just stared. "Please," she whispered. "You have to listen. You were never the target. It started as an assignment. But I fell in love with you." His face barely moved, only his jaw tightened. When he spoke, his voice was flat. "You don't get to use that word." "Jack!" He turned away, cutting her off, like he'd been doing it his whole life. "Love doesn't lie to my face. Love doesn't record my life, like evidence. Her voice cracked. I stopped recording because I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't betray you. He looked at her then, really looked at her. For a flicker of a second, the man who once smiled for her almost returned. But pain drowned it out. Maybe, he said quietly, you should have betrayed me sooner. Would have hurt less. He left before she could answer. The door shut, and for the next 3 days, no one saw him again. The empire began to unravel without him. His men whispered in corridors, deals went unmade, and Amber, locked away in that silent room, felt the world outside fracture with every passing hour. Guilt chewed through her like rust. She tried the window, the lock, the vent, anything to escape the cage she'd built with her own lies. When she finally managed to pry open the latch on the 4th night, the wind hit her like freedom. She climbed down the side of the mansion barefoot, the night slicing her skin, her heart hammering in her chest. She ran until the city swallowed her. But even then, she couldn't stop herself from turning back. One last glance toward the house where she'd destroyed them both. Something inside told her it wasn't over. She was right. When she returned to his penthouse the next day, sirens wailing in the distance, the place was empty. No guards, no lights, just silence. On the table, a single sheet of paper waited beneath a half-empty glass. Her shaking hands picked it up. You wanted justice. Here's mine. I turned myself in. Amber's breath caught. The paper slipped from her fingers. Outside, the city lights blurred into tears. If your heart broke a little just now, tell us, would you have forgiven him? And if you believe love can survive even betrayal, show it. Hit the like, share this moment, and let others feel it too. Dawn broke over the city like a wound, red, raw, and impossible to look away from. Police sirens screamed through the streets, slicing the morning air with their cold precision. Amber stood in the shadows of the courthouse steps, her heart pounding in sync with the rhythmic shutter clicks of 100 cameras. The headlines were already being written. Underworld King captured. Operation Lincoln, justice at last. But for her, it didn't feel like justice. It felt like loss. Jack Lincoln, the man whose name had made entire cities tremble, was led out in handcuffs. No defiance, no smirk, just quiet acceptance, as if he'd already made peace with the ending long before it arrived. Reporters shouted questions that cut through the morning haze. Jack, did she set you up? Amber Robinson, are you the undercover who brought him down? Was it love or strategy? Each word felt like glass under her skin. Jack paused halfway down the steps. His guards shifted uneasily, but he turned, just enough to find her in the crowd. Their eyes met, and for a single breath, the chaos fell away. No one else mattered. Not the cameras, not the police, not the world that had turned their story into spectacle. Just them. You got what you came for, he murmured, voice steady, resigned. Don't cry now. But she did. The words broke something inside her that no badge, no title, no victory could mend. Tears blurred the world until the only thing left was the fading sound of his chains, the cruel rhythm of fate closing in. By noon, the city was alive with celebration. Justice had won. The empire of fear had fallen. Officers slapped each other's backs. Politicians smiled for cameras, spinning the story of redemption through grit and loyalty. Amber's name was everywhere. The detective who infiltrated, who endured, who triumphed. They called her a hero. They didn't see the way her hands trembled when she accepted the commendation. That night, she sat alone in her apartment, the same one where it had all begun. The same rain-streaked window, the same hum of distant traffic. Only now, the silence was unbearable. The phone on her table was cracked from the day she dropped it, the day she saw his message for the first time. That single mistake had rewritten both their lives. Amber traced her thumb over the screen. No new messages. She told herself it was better this way, that the city was safer. That justice had been served, but justice didn't keep her warm. Justice didn't remember the sound of his laughter, the way his eyes softened when he said her name. The news replayed the footage over and over. Jack Lincoln escorted through prison gates, his head held high, his suit immaculate even beneath the weight of chains. The press called him the fallen king. They said the streets were cleaner now, that people could sleep again. But Amber knew better. Monsters don't vanish, they just get replaced. And love, even when buried, leaves ghosts behind. Days turned into weeks. Letters began to arrive at the station, anonymous notes addressed to Detective Robinson. Some praised her courage. Others condemned her for falling for the enemy. None of them mattered. She had only one letter she couldn't stop rereading, the one he'd left behind. "You wanted justice? Here's mine." I turned myself in. Every word was a wound and a confession. Some nights she swore she could still hear his voice in the dark, calm, deep, deliberate, the same tone that had once made her forget who she was. And then one evening, as the city slept beneath another restless rain, her phone buzzed. A message appeared. No name, just a number she hadn't seen in months. Mistakes happen for a reason. Her heart stopped. She didn't know if it was him. Maybe it was someone playing a cruel joke. Maybe it was fate, reminding her that not all stories end with clean lines and happy endings. Amber closed her eyes, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Outside, thunder rolled over the skyline, distant, echoing, familiar. She whispered into the dark, not expecting an answer. Then why does this one still hurt? If this moment broke your heart too, tell us below. Was it justice or tragedy? And if you believe some love stories never truly end, show it. Hit the like. Share this story, and let others feel it too. The weeks that followed felt like someone had pressed pause on Amber Robinson's life. The city moved on, but she stayed still. Her name filled headlines, her face graced interviews, and yet every compliment felt like an accusation. Detective Robinson, the woman who took down Jack Lincoln. They said it like it was a victory, but every time she heard it, it sounded more like a eulogy. Her new office at headquarters overlooked the skyline, the same skyline she'd once watched from Jack's penthouse balcony, his arm wrapped around her waist. Now, the glass reflected only her own hollow eyes. Letters of promotion piled on her desk. Commendations, bonuses, invitations to speak at press conferences. But sleep? That never came. Every night, she found herself writing instead. Not reports, not statements, letters. To him. Unsigned, unmarked, never sent through official channels. Each one a confession she could never make out loud. Jack, I don't know why I still write to you. Maybe because it's the only time I feel human. They call me a hero, but all I did was lose the only person who ever saw me beyond the badge. She'd fold the paper neatly, slide it into an envelope, and drop it into the same postbox every month. She never expected a reply. And for a long time, there wasn't one. It was a Thursday evening when the city lights seemed softer than usual. Rain painted the streets in liquid gold, the world outside her apartment shimmering like a half-remembered dream. Amber sat by her window, sipping cold coffee, half reading another news article about her own courageous operation. She muted it halfway through. Her phone sat on the table, screen dark, silent, until it wasn't. A buzz. One notification. Unknown number. Her pulse quickened. She reached for it, hesitating before unlocking the screen. The message was short, simple, familiar. Mistakes happen for a reason. No signature, no emoji. Just words. The same words that had started everything. Her breath caught. For a moment, the world tilted, as if the past had reached out through the digital static and pulled her back in. Amber read it again, and again, and again. Logic told her it couldn't be him. He was in prison. The number should have been dead, but the heart doesn't speak logic. It whispers maybe. Tears welled before she even realized she was crying. The glow of the phone's screen blurred through the drops, turning the message into something almost ethereal, like a ghost, reminding her it still existed. She wanted to reply, to ask if it was really him, to say she was sorry, that she still loved him, that she never stopped thinking about the night she almost told the truth. But her fingers froze, because what if it wasn't him? What if it was just fate, cruel, cyclical, unfinished, reminding her of everything she'd lost? The message stayed on the screen, pulsing softly in the dim light, each second dragging like eternity. She whispered into the silence, "Jack, is that you?" Only the rain answered, tapping gently against the glass, the same rhythm that had followed them since the beginning. Amber set the phone down, her reflection staring back from the dark window, a woman torn between justice and regret, duty and in love, truth and the ghost of a man she could never forget. Her voice broke in a whisper meant for no one. "Some mistakes change your fate." A pause. "Others remind you it was never yours to begin with." The screen dimmed. The rain fell harder. And somewhere in the city's sleepless hum, two hearts, one free, one caged, beat to the same quiet rhythm once more. If this ending left your heart heavy, let us know. Would you have written back? And if you believe some love stories never die, show it. Tap like, share, and let the world feel this ending too.